Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monday. It is a fantastic day. Mondays should be embraced and enjoyed, not dreaded, I think. So, one of my things I'm embracing today is I just enjoy my time with our graphic artist extraordinaire, Miss Hollis Murphy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here and be with all of you.
Right? You know what I love is just your way of looking at marketing and messaging, because like you are unique in the sense that you're not just a graphic artist. So like a lot of people don't know that. Like you have a really interesting background of like communications and marketing. Do you want to just give people a little overview of like that world of your lens of how you see things?
Sure. I was one of those folks who in school I couldn't really decide which route I wanted to go. I studied fine art in high school. I went to a prestigious boarding school for fine art and kind of got over the artistic aspect of things and started going down a path of communications and studied communication theory, television and radio communications, advertising, and then ended up finding a path that combined both of those into visual communications, allowing me to, look at messaging, overarching themes, and then also apply the visuals to that as well to make sure things were concise or consistent across different media avenues, depending on which brand or product or, concept we were working with at the time. So.
It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
So it's a broader lens than just art, right? Like your message looks at the holistic picture of visual marketing, right? So with that in mind, you have some things to share with us today. What do you have?
I do. So working with BI, I do a lot for our marketing efforts in general as an agency, but then I also work with our individual clients on their websites and their logos. And so today what I want to talk about a little bit are some website trends that we're seeing across the spectrum of industry, of market on the web. So we can kind of take a deep dive or a shallow dive really into three main categories. And one of the examples I'm going to show is going to look very familiar to us as an agency, but then also to our partners as well. So the big design trends, I've kind of boiled them down into three categories. The first of which is don't be afraid to be bold. So what this means is that we're seeing this trend here, started in 2019 a little bit, it's moving further in 2020, and by 2021, I think we're going to see a lot more of it, where people are using much more bold typefaces, bold colors. You can still be bold and have white space, negative space, but people are using bold colors and typography in a bit of a new way. And one of the things that's really interesting about that too is the way it translates from desktop onto mobile. So you can still have bold colors coming through on mobile device experience in order to showcase the same energy or the same passion that your brand is showing on a desktop web experience, and it translates very nicely into the mobile. So one of the examples of this I want to show is actually the BI website. We are using bold colors here in the form of gradient. So the gradients are one way to incorporate that without being too committed to one solid color over another. And in this way, what we've done is use some large typography to work with that gradient and show some energy here and some of the personality of our brand. Another example, you'll notice all of the examples I chose are somehow animal related. So some of them are products, some are services and things, but really they showcase, each of these topics. So staying on this form of be bold. This is a website called Dogswell, and they make treats and food items, supplemental items. They're for dogs. And one of the things that I think they're doing really nicely here is in the realm of being bold, they're using bold fonts here, bold typography, but still utilizing white space. So being bold doesn't mean that you have to go, and make everything neon green or huge swaths of red or blue. You can still have that bold feeling, bold claims, bold messaging, to showcase, that element that we're seeing as a trend. Another area where they incorporate the color as well with the typography is in this sort of instance here, where they are utilizing the bold color to draw some visual interest here, the bold typography to showcase their claims, but then also adding in some additional elements with the starburst in the background and some other custom typography elements to showcase the personality of the brand. All right. So another trend that we're seeing here is all about embracing the movement. So here, what I want to focus on are micro interactions and animations. When we're talking about movement, that could be anything from content moving into the screen. As you scroll down a page, you might have some animation effects of content coming in from the bottom or the left or right of your screen and into view. When we're talking about micro interactions, we're talking about hover interactions, ways that the website might interact with your cursor as you're browsing through the website as well. This is being really a big trend. We see a lot of it in the tech space. So one of the big things to remember in all of these trends, and when you're looking at modern website design, is to focus on the elements themselves without having the element overpower your brand or your messaging. So you don't want to overload movement or overload those bold colors if it doesn't work for your brand. So one example of this that's very, very subtle, but I think it's really cute, is in the eyes here of this cat at the top and this cat at the dog, at the bottom. The eyes sort of follow your cursor around the page. And this is a Spotify landing page for a playlist for your pets. So this is a very minimal page. This is it. But they added in this micro interaction here to just add that little extra detail and that little playful aspect there that pet owners in particular are probably looking for, So I think this one is kind of a fun example. It doesn't do anything functionally, but it does breathe a little bit of life into the site itself. Another example of some subtle movement or micro animations here are on this site called Dog Jogs. And one of the things that they do is they have micro animations as divider elements to sort of guide the viewer down the page. And then they've also added some movement into some of their supportive illustrations or visual elements. So as you go down the page, because their brand is all about movement, right? It's about moving with the dogs, taking the dogs on walks and jogs throughout the city. They're adding in some movement into the layout of their site itself as a way to sort of reinforce that appeal to the purpose of the business itself. Another thing that we can talk about here is when we were talking about being bold, they're using some very bold, active colors here, but they're using them sparingly, so that way it's not overwhelming across the site. One of the ways that they're very effective in using those bold colors is in these calls to action here on the side. Those stay with you as you scroll down the page, and so they're utilizing bold colors here in order to draw your attention to ways to get in touch, to convert a website visit into, a new client or a sale, for instance. This is a little bit more subtle of an animation, but again, they're embracing the movement here. This is a bit of a tech company, but they have animal themes in their imagery, so I liked it for this discussion. But one of the things that they have are some very subtle animations in the background, as well as you scroll down the page, some of their supportive elements will move with you in a parallax effect, is what that's called. You see a parallax effect very often in hero, large image areas, for instance, where the background image might move with you as you scroll. This is using that parallax effect to add some movement as a supportive background element without it pertaining to one large image. They're doing individual elements there. Again, you're seeing some of those bold colors come through, but the way that they have used them is more of supportive color combinations there, as opposed to being large blocks of color. So this is one of those areas where you really have to look at the trend and decide how to best utilize it for your brand. So this is a brand where they wanted to maintain white space, maintain that sort of tech feel with the white space, but utilize some of those trends in a supportive way, so that they're not overwhelming that sense of sleek, modern tech mindset. They also have some micro interactions here as well, with their different hover effects throughout the site too. All right. Just different ways to introduce movement throughout the site. As we come to this next one, this is a daycare service. I'm not affiliated with this site by any means, but I thought that they did a really nice job of using those micro interactions on some of their call outs. Hovering over this title here of Unleash the Fun doesn't do anything other than add that additional detail of movement, of animation into the site. So you can have animation where on the previous example it was taking up the full screen in that hero area, or you can have very subtle animations that just interact with the mouse cursor a little bit as the user goes through the site. The next trend, and the third trend that I want to kind of introduce for you, is, all about making it yours. That's the most important thing here. So when we're talking about big trends, and when you look up trends in web design, oftentimes those trends are being identified or exemplified by big companies or big agencies. So you'll see creative agency websites pushing the envelope, or tech company websites pushing the envelope. And they sort of dictate what the new, fresh idea is in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense for your veterinary practice or your mom and pop restaurant website or your local craft shop. Those trends can be applied without overtaking the purpose of your brand. So the most important thing here is to take these ideas and make them yours through your branding, your personality on the website, and the imagery that you use. So I have two examples here. One's a little more subtle, and one I think takes all of these ideas and kind of combines them into their full website in a really effective way. So this one is a little more subtle, and I just think it's adorable. It's called catscarf.com, and this person, they make scarves for cats and donate the proceeds to helping animals. And what I think is really interesting about the way that they utilize this website here is that as you scroll down the page, a little scarf will show up here in the top corner, and it's a very subtle design element. But one of the things that they're doing here is they're reinforcing their brand and the concept of the site through a very micro interaction here, a little bit of animation, a little bit of illustration, some bold color against this white space, but they're utilizing it as a way to kind of pull you back up to the top. So again, it's taking those ideas, but using them in an effective way that represents the business itself a little bit better. Just again, very small moment, but a nice detail that really adds to the cohesiveness and effectiveness of the design. Also, who doesn't love a cat in a scarf. I mean, come on. The last example is the Maritime Aquarium, which I think this is a really large example of all of the things that we've been talking about. They have very consistent, cohesive branding throughout, which you can see they pulled fonts from their logo to make sure that things are very consistent. They also use movement, both in the form of video here in the background, but also as we scroll down the page, you'll have different items flow into the page as the user scrolls down. So they're engaging the viewer with movement throughout the site. They're being bold here with both their typefaces and their color contrast, but then also large blocks of color. What you'll notice here is that their use of color is also using those gradients again. So we're not just getting one block of color, we're getting this nice smooth gradient here that feels very fresh, feels very modern, but is also being very good at communicating out the purpose of their brand, the purpose of their site, which is to promote the aquarium, promote the animals, and to get people to come and visit. So this, I think, is a really interesting example of having that movement, of using those bold colors, of making sure that things are branded but visually interesting and visually cohesive throughout the site. Taking those 2020 trends, say that 5 times fast, and using them in a way that doesn't detract from their brand, but rather enhances it. So again, some small elements here that they're utilizing, but they end up having a very big visual impact and make for a very cohesive website experience. Down to even this little animated indicator here to tell the user to scroll down is taken from the bubbles in their logo. So you can see how that level of detail of making sure that the elements of the movement or the function, the micro interaction, is staying on brand and supporting the brand and not overwhelming it just because it's the new trend. So those were kind of some examples of things that we're seeing and how we can, take those ideas and utilize them either sparingly or throughout a design in order to, stay modern and fresh with what we're doing, while still maintaining, like we were talking about earlier, the message and the purpose of the site itself. So
it's amazing.
Some neat stuff, right?
Well, I just think about, oh my gosh, how far we've come. Like,
yes.
Right? Like it's sort of like you don't know that changes are evolving and happening until you like Google websites from 2010 design, mm-hmm. Right? And then you're like, oh, that was really 2010 design. And we thought that was super bomb and cool at that time. We were super excited about it. And now we're like, oh, okay. Because look what we have today. It's mm-hmm. like such an amazing, like just that aquarium picture you had up at the end. It was mesmerizing to see the jellyfish on the screen, and it made you as a viewer wanted to stay for a little bit longer, right? Just to see what is it going to do next, which is part of I'm sure the concept and the element of the design is for the engagement, right? Like how do we get people to engage with the website and stick
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about engagement and it's all about communication. I mean, those are the two purposes of any website. Even if it is an e-commerce site, the purpose is to communicate to a viewer why they want to purchase this item. So when we're talking about that aquarium site, you're spot on in that the video is so representative of what a user or what a visitor will expect when they're there. And to be able to translate that into a digital experience really works to their benefit. One of the things that I am always saying to our clients with Beyond Indigo when we talk is that their website is their virtual waiting room, right?
Yes.
And so, you want to make sure that the tone and the style and the communication or the communicated methods are all in supportive of reflecting your real life waiting room, not necessarily exactly visually, but you should have a sense of who I'm engaging with when I'm on a website. We try and translate that into the digital experience as much as possible.
And even more so now.
Yes, yes. Everything is, if you don't have a website now, I don't know how you're making it, because everyone is online all the time.
Right? And want to know. They want to know. They want to see things, because they can't
Yeah.
necessarily see things in person for multiple reasons. Right? So, well, thank you, Hollis. I always enjoy your wisdom and seeing what you come up with. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
well, thank you. This was lovely.
It was great. It was a moment. So
Yeah.
everybody have a great rest of their week.